We call it people technology.
インテル入ってる。
So 195 is what Punjab Kings have managed after they were put into bat by Rishabh Pant's Delhi Capitals. What sort of score is that? Looks like runs are back at the Wankhede. Runs were back at the Chepauk earlier today. So we've picked a heck of a day to have two bowlers on our show on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Begin with T20 Time Out, powered by Intel. Ian Bishop is here with that unmistakable laugh. Time to say hello to Ajit Agarkar for the first time this season. Good to have you on a day, Ajit, where the Wankhede is more true to the surface that you bowled on, where runs seem to be slightly easier to score than in the last few games.
Yeah, it was funny how the last couple of games played. I never imagined that, especially how the tournament started. So this looks more like the Wankhede and seems to be a good score.
And is it just that, Bish? Is it a good score, or is it the kind of score Punjab would be thinking, could we have got a few more?
I wondered whether maybe there are a few more runs out there. Mayank Agarwal is back to form. They gave him that, as we discussed, I think, yesterday, that he deserved to not be scrutinized too much for two failures, given what he has done over the last season. So it was good to see him back stroking the ball nicely. KL Rahul went. I can understand after what happened in the last game that he was a little cautious. He was 50 off 45 deliveries or something like that, whereas in the first game his 50 came off 30. So I thought he was a little bit slow in that opening partnership, and people will say, well, Mayank was going. So maybe a few more runs could have been added, but it's still a decent total. We'll know how good at the end of the game.
Yeah, it is such a fascinating conversation, and it's going to start again now this season in the IPL. The focus on how KL Rahul approaches his innings. Right, Ajit? You have two 60s in this game. Mayank Agarwal going 69 at a strike rate of 190, and KL Rahul 61 at a strike rate of 119. So what do you make of Rahul's approach today?
I mean, Mayank's carried on how he was last season. I think that sort of helped Rahul. First game when he got that 90 odd, he did accelerate, even after Chris Gayle got out, which was a good sign. I think the over after Chris Gayle got out, he had a 6 and a boundary, which he perhaps didn't do last season. So hopefully this is not how he's going to bat, because clearly the position they were in, when Mayank got out, they were 122, I think, in the 13th over, if I'm not wrong. And from then on, you would expect, with the firepower that they have with Nicholas Pooran, Chris Gayle, Huda, those guys, you'd still want to get past that 200. We don't know whether that is required. We'll probably find out soon enough. But yeah, you don't want Rahul to try and play those sorts of innings again. Hopefully it's a one-off, because he played differently in the previous innings that he scored in this year's IPL.
Is it wise, Bish, to look at how the innings went last time? You had a bit of a batting failure and carry that on and saying, okay, let's not go too hard and the risk of losing too many too early? Or is it best left? Is that game best left because you have a completely different surface today? Should he have been thinking about the last game?
Well, it's hard for us to know exactly what he was thinking of. Let's preface that.
Yeah,
we are absolutely certain. We can only speculate. The good players, the best players, won't be thinking too much about that. They made an assessment of conditions, I thought, very early. Mayank said after an over and a half, they saw the ball not swinging and they were on the charge. Well, Mayank certainly was on the charge. What KL Rahul did when he scored that 91, I think it was in the first game, was he just played freely, fearlessly, assessed the conditions and played beautifully. Today, I felt a little bit of the reserve coming back. But in time over this season, I hope he goes back to that fearless person. And with that comes more risk. He may fail once or twice, but his team really requires him to lead with that freeness. And Wasim Jaffer was the one that said this season, KL Rahul is going to play with a lot more freedom.
Okay.
And it made a difference in that first game. I mean, they would have easily lost that game. 220 they got to, or 221. And even though Rajasthan made a good fist of it, they still fell short. And you needed those runs. So we'll find out whether that's been the mistake tonight.
Yeah, if you look at how Rahul played that first game versus this one, Ajit, he's good enough, even if he's deciding to play a little more cautiously, to still go at 140, 150. This is an innings by almost top to tail. He's gone at a strike rate around about 100, maybe 120 towards the end before he got out. But he's a good enough player, isn't he, to at least bat 140, 150, even when he's batting cautiously.
Yeah, he is because you can't really stop him. Free flowing, a proper batsman who can still play the big shots at will. So, like I said, hopefully it's a one-off and it's not a pattern in the season, because clearly at the start of the season he's played differently. So
Okay, fair enough. Bish, just last word on this. Sometimes, even when you're playing cautiously, you do end up presenting a lot more chances. He was dropped 3 times, so maybe Delhi were celebrating KL Rahul's 29th birthday with a few gifts. But it's not like only when you go hard, you present the opportunity to be out. Rahul, even in this approach, could have been dismissed. Just another vindication that he could play a little more freely, even if it means a little more risk.
Yeah, he has to trust himself. KL Rahul is an excellent player. He's a fantastic player. He just has to continue liberating his mind. It's a work in progress. And the leadership, one way you can look at it is, hey, this guy knows that he's the leader of the team and he's prepared to try to carry the burden for the team. He's prepared to try to play responsibly. He just needs to find that balance once again between looking to carry that and playing freely for the rest of the team. Trust himself. He really has to trust himself.
All right, let's do an analysis of the Delhi bowling now, Ajit. We'll know if this is a good enough score for Punjab in a couple of hours from now. But regardless, did Delhi bowl well enough? Rare day where Abada's gone at nearly 11 and over. Chris Wokes, who's been in such good form, also going for more than 40. Did they not bowl well enough, or they all right for you?
I think tough conditions as well for the bowlers, or more like 1KD conditions, I guess. I think the decision making, both games from the captains, hasn't been great tonight. I think Owen Morgan in that first game made a strange choices with his bowling. And even here, I mean, someone like a Rabada doesn't bowl till what he bowled second change today. When you know the top two are so strong for Punjab and you want to try and get early wickets, when the ball doesn't swing, Chris Wokes perhaps isn't as devastating as when the ball does swing or seam. So those sorts of decisions, very well, you could understand they wanted the ball to swing back in, but after that first over, you saw it didn't, and still bowled that second over. So some of the decision making, as it is, it's hard at 1KD when the pitch is flat. So you want to try and get your bowling changes spot on, and perhaps they weren't early in the innings. Once the batsmen are set, it doesn't matter then who you get on to bowl. Early in the innings, you just have to be a little bit more clinical, which perhaps they missed a few tricks, but those two batted really well as well.
Yeah, we just break that down. 1 over for Abada in the first 10, Bish, the sixth over, and then came back after the first 10. Avesh Khan, who's had a good season of sorts, didn't bowl until the ninth over. These sort of just plans that captains go in with into a game that at times don't quite look as smart as we'd like them to.
Yeah, there's always a plan. That's one of the things I've learned from playing and from watching and working on a lot of cricket. Sometimes us beyond the boundary will say, well, I don't see what the plan. There's always a plan. It may not be a good plan, but there always is a plan. Avesh Khan to me is started bowling well. One of the things that I'd like to take out of Delhi's bowling effort, I noticed a much more determined effort to bowl Yorkers at the back end of the innings, whether they were wide Yorkers or straight Yorkers, something they didn't do very well against the Rajasthan Royals, and they paid the price for it. So even though they've gone for a few runs tonight, conditions dictated quite a bit of it. I saw an effort to try to bowl full and straight or full and wide. Maybe they could have done it even more.
Avesh Khan's had a good tournament so far, Ajit. But again, you come in with a plan that, all right, he's bowling well, so let me keep him for the middle and the death. Or would you have liked to see a bowler who's bowled well actually get an over much earlier, especially when the likes of Meriwala on IPL debut were going for a few?
Yeah, for sure. I think had to get him on early. I think he got him in the 11th over, if I'm not wrong,
That's
or the
right.
10th. And he bowled well again. So that's a positive for Delhi Capitals to take out of it. But you want to try and set up the game, especially with teams like Punjab. I mean, the top four is so strong. Okay, Nicholas Pooran batted 5 today, but Huda's been in good form. So the top order, you need to get 1 or 2 wickets there. Try to get a couple of wickets if you can in the first 6 or 7 overs to make life easier for the overs to follow on good pitches. So and you want to try and bowl your best bowlers or bowlers who are in good form earlier on. Fortunately for them, he still did a good job. Otherwise, they might have been chasing a bit more. So that's a positive. But again, like I said before, some strange bowling choices, or when they were brought on, is what I feel.
I've always been curious to know, especially in the case of a team like Delhi, Vish, we keep speculating from afar that yes, Ricky Ponting's taking a lot of the big decisions, the buck probably stops with him. Pant's in his first season as captain. From what you've observed of the ground, I know Sanjay Manjrekar said that many times, that he said, "Oh, we see a lot of communication from Ponting onto the field to the captain." Does the captain actually have as much help when it comes to these sorts of calls, bowling changes, etc.? Is it more to do with the captain at the time, or do you still suspect there's a lot of input from the dugout?
Well, Mr. Agarkar can give me some input on this. The way that I see it, again, is that it depends on the coach. You have some coaches who their philosophy is to feed information a lot of the time, particularly if they have a young captain who is amenable to those sorts of suggestions. Some senior captains don't want that interference from on the field. Phil Simmons, for example. Phil is a guy, he will be reluctant to send too many messages because he wants players and captains to take accountability and learn if they make mistakes. He feels that's the way they will grow. Tom Moody is another one. He will perhaps, when he's coach, send a message, but he will give players a lot of accountability. So Ricky seems to be one who wants to get into the mix of it. And I don't mind that. It's just a different philosophy. Pant is a young captain. He needs teaching. He needs learning. And I'm sure he will do.
All right, fair enough. Now, spin doesn't continue to have a happy time of it at the Wankhede Stadium. Ashwin bowling his 4 overs on this occasion, but no real wickets. Ajit, is it just a reflection of conditions? Because spin has just had a lesser and lesser role to play the Wankhede Stadium. More and more teams happy to even go without a frontline wrist spinner now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can see from the team composition, it's a tough place to bowl. But Ashwin did a good job. What, 28 of his 4? And he went for a big over in those 4 overs. So you would think, yes, you would ideally want him to get a wicket, perhaps a couple. That always helps in the middle overs. But he still bowled well on what is a tough pitch for the spinner. The outfield so quick, the ground isn't big, so it's always a challenge whether you try and buy a wicket or you try and create the pressure to then get a wicket. So I thought he did a good job. I think Lalit Yadav was brought in, did bowl a great over. It is a tough place. You can see even Punjab Kings have left Murugan Ashwin out. So it is a tough place, and it is what the conditions dictate sometimes. It doesn't matter how good you are.
All right, tell you what, it's going to be a cracking conversation that we've set up for the end of the game. If Delhi chase this with 2 overs to spare, we'll do a detailed analysis of KL.
You're always looking at the wrong end of the stick, Raunak. Come on.
All right, we can all get together in 2.5 hours' time and talk about how masterfully placed KL was, because Punjab would have won by 20 or 30. Right. Thank you very much, Ian Bishop. I always can rely on you to hold the right end of the stick. And Ajit Agarkar, there's a lot more to discuss at the end of the game. Join us then. Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Time Out, powered by Intel. 196 for Delhi to get. Should be a cracking game. Let's see how it goes.
We call it people technology.
インテル入ってる